Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the KeenGamer podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I will be hosting today. I'm Max, and I'm joined in the virtual studio by the wonderful Kole. Hello, Kole. How's it going?
I'm doing great. How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. It's been a bit of a day, but I'm back here and I'm on the podcast, and all is well. Even though as our video viewers may see, I'm having to hold my microphone because I don't yet have a microphone stand here in the UK. But that's neither here nor there, if you ask me. We're not here to talk about microphone stands. We're here to talk about them video games. I think you'll agree. Oh, yes. Now we've got a fun episode in store for you all. Me and Kole are just going to be talking about remakes and sequels and the games that got them and the games that should and the games that didn't and the games that will if we have any say in the matter. But before we get to that point, a couple of bits of news. There have been a couple of medium-sized stories today. Well, not today, this week. The first of which, as many of you will no doubt have heard, Nintendo has finally announced a new model for the Nintendo Switch with an OLED screen. I confess I can't remember what the O actually stands for. Maybe like OMG LED or something.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's got this larger screen with, I think, a slightly improved resolution, improved audio. It's got 64 gigabytes of internal storage rather than the vanilla 32, I think. Quite like a very small thing, but one that I'm quite excited about is a LAN port built into the system's dock, finally. So if you want to play online a little more smoothly than relying on the Wi-Fi, you can do that now.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty big for a lot of people, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, it's oh yes, of course, and of course the most important new addition, the more robust kickstand. I think we were all saying, Nintendo, when will you give us that 4K kickstand, please?
That's what I want, is that highest res kickstand you can get.
Exactly. Yes. Like it's a big announcement. Kind of.
Yeah.
It's one that everybody has been waiting on.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of. I think it's been a mixed bag, sort of. It's sort of that they seem to be adding some of the things that people were looking forward to, but definitely not all of them.
Not the biggest things I think people were looking forward to. And so the reception seems mixed.
Yeah, I think like 4K resolution, at least when it was docked, like was something that people were really angling for and looking forward to, and that does not appear to be on the cards.
No, it doesn't.
No, I think it's 720p on the screen, and then it can upscale to 1080p on TV, and that's it.
Yeah, I don't think it changes really anything resolution-wise. I looked it up quick. I thought this was the case, but I didn't want to get it wrong if I wasn't sure. Organic LED, so it's something about the way it's produced, using organic materials. And if I recall, I think it's just that they have like better capacity for being both brighter and dimmer, and like it's just supposed to be clear and look good. I mean, OLED technology, it's been around for a while, but I think it was probably a price thing before. So it's really nice to see that they're including that in the better sound. But when people have been waiting for a Switch Pro announcement and then they get this slight hardware revision, it's not the news people were hoping for, I think.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Like announcements like this really, to me, seem to highlight the kind of the similarities and the differences between the console and the PC crowd, because this really seems like something that you could just buy like a new, slightly better component for a PC for presumably a fraction of the price, depending on the model, but a portion of the price that the Switch OLED model will be going for. It's about $350, according to this article by KeenGamer's own Chris Hall. Whereas with a console, like, what you buy is what you get, and if you want a even very slightly better model, you have to get a whole
new one.
You can't just like get a new component to add in to an original Switch or something. Which So you
It's
want
not the Nintendo 64 where you could get the expansion pack. That was ahead of its
64
time, and they left
DD.
it behind.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like that was like a RAM expansion or something, wasn't it?
Yeah,
And
yep.
it was a small little thing, but
Mhm.
it made some kind of like it was an improvement to the console that, as you say, you could just slot in, and
Yep.
it made games like Donkey Kong 64 possible. So I will
Exactly.
be forever
Majora's
grateful.
Mask. Did Majora's Mask require it, or? Oh boy, I had one, but I didn't have Donkey Kong 64, so I don't remember. I'll have to go back to my closet.
Yeah. But yeah, like I think that's part of where the slightly ambivalent reactions from people is coming from, isn't it? Like when you buy a new console or a new version of a console, you expect bigger, broader improvements, and this seems like a very granular improve. Like it is definitely better than the original Switch, and the bigger screen is going to make using it
That's
in
nice.
portable mode really nice. I would imagine. Like I've been playing my Switch a load in portable mode over the last month
Same.
or so when I've been traveling from Spain to the UK, and it's been great. And if I had a slightly bigger screen for it, then so much the better. I just don't know if I would shell out $350 for the privilege.
No, I wonder who would. I have a hard time figuring out, like I've been thinking about it since they announced it, and who is the market for this Switch revision? Like, is anybody who has the original? Maybe if someone has a Switch Lite and they were thinking about getting a new Switch, then they would, go for it. But I don't know. I feel like anyone who already has a Switch, I don't know why you would pay that amount of money just for a slight upgrade. It seems marginal at best to me.
I think also, like, particularly with, I mean, you're going to get the super techie fans who are like, this is an upgrade. I have the money for it. I will buy it. But particularly being a Nintendo fan, buying a Nintendo console, which, historically they have traded on, the ingenuity and fun and innovation of their games, and like the novelty and often downright weirdness of their kind of console gimmicks and things like that, which sometimes works incredibly well, like with the Wii and the Switch. Sometimes doesn't work so well, like with the Wii U. But if you're a Nintendo fan, I feel like a lot of the time you're not going to be that bothered about kind of the strength of the hardware, because if you were, you would probably have gotten like a PS4 or an Xbox One or one of the new generation of consoles, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, it does feel like, as you say, like, who is this upgrade for? Who can say? But I think maybe people upgrading from a Switch Lite, that might be a good shout.
I could see that, because the Switch Lite's what, like $200 or something, and I'm sure there were a number of people. So like early in quarantine, when it was impossible to find a Switch, like for a while, you'd be able to find a Switch Lite every now and then. So I got lucky, and I might have mentioned this in a previous podcast, is that I had ordered my wife a Switch Lite because Animal Crossing was coming out, and I ordered it for like 2 months ahead of time. And then right after that, you couldn't find them anymore. But when I was looking out, you could find Switch Lite. So I'm guessing there's a number of people who probably settled for a Switch Lite and now want like a full Switch to play on their TV.
Yeah.
I don't know who else it would really be for, though. The way that I have sort of interpreted this is, I'm guessing that they were just overhauling the hardware overall for the main Switch model. There's been a lot of component restraints in the supply line, and maybe they kind of made some changes according to what they could get. They upgraded some things along the way and just said, well, this is just the new revision we're making going forward, because it was just more practical. So it's not that it's for a different audience, it's just kind of what they're making now. I could be wrong.
No, that sounds reasonable to me. And I guess the good news is that because it's not such a drastic update, I remember in a previous podcast episode, I think I was on there with Ben and Luis, and one of them floated the idea, because it was just before E3, and we were talking about what might come up, including announcements of a Switch Pro and announcements regarding Breath of the Wild 2 as well. And one of them was saying, it may be that they announced them both at the same time, and then Breath of the Wild 2 is like being primarily designed with the Switch Pro in mind to like encourage people to buy the new console. And since this OLED upgrade doesn't seem to be that drastic, that at least seems like it may not be the case anymore. Breath of the Wild 2 should still be usable and accessible and enjoyable to play on the original Switch.
Yeah, agreed. Because when you guys were talking about that, I was thinking the same thing, and I was a little worried that would be the case. I thought, I have to play Breath of the Wild 2, and I don't want to have to buy a new Switch just to do it. Look, I will do that.
Do not get me wrong, Mr. Nintendo. I will buy it.
Yes, I will be first in line, but I don't want to have to.
Exactly.
But a lot like they did with the like the 3DS when they. So I thought. I keep finding myself wondering how, like, whether Nintendo even would put out a Pro. Everyone seemed to think that they're going to put out a Switch Pro. I've been a little skeptical, though not surprised, because of the 3DS versus the new 3DS, which, you know, came out near the end of the life cycle. And there were only a handful of games that even took advantage of it, though, or especially any that required it. So I just don't know. I think Nintendo would have a hard time alienating like a large group of people who like bought a Switch to play games, especially anyone who buys this hardware revision. If they release a Pro, even like within a year after that, I think there's gonna be a lot of pissed off people.
No doubt. Yeah, it's tough to say. We never quite know what's going on with Nintendo, do we? They are shrouded in mystery forever and always.
Full of surprises, though, and I love it. But every once in a while, it kind of, you know, bites you in the ass when you get your hopes way too far up.
It kind of feels the similar kind of almost trollness of in their E3 presentation when they opened with Kazuya was announced for Smash or something, and the opening thing was like some mysterious figure throwing Ganondorf into a volcano, and everyone was like, no, they're not going to open with Breath of the Wild 2 news. Oh my God. And then it wasn't. It was just like, you can see they planned that.
They know what they're doing.
To mess with people. Kind of feels like almost that sort of sense of humor with this as well. It's like, there's a Switch Pro. Kind of.
Yeah, exactly. We know you asked for a hardware revision, so here it is. You all named it the Switch Pro, not us.
They're like the mischievous genie who gives you technically what you asked for.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Well, that is the new OLED model of the Nintendo Switch, which will be available in October, I think. Was it?
All right, fine. Yes. I'll buy one, I guess.
The 8th of October, 2021, with a retail price of $349.99. So if that's your jam, then you can pick it up then. Now, the other lovely little news nugget we've got for you lucky people today, Hideo Kojima. Speaking of mysterious people shrouded in mystery, Hideo Kojima has signed a letter of intent with Microsoft that states that the two parties intend to work out the details on a publishing agreement for a new Xbox game, according to sources familiar with the matter. This is from an article on VentureBeat written by VentureBeat's own Jeff Grubb. So it's Kojima and Microsoft. There have been chats for a while about a possible partnership between those two parties, with Kojima bringing the latest iteration of his peculiar brand of Kojima-ness to
that's the only way to describe it.
Kojima-ness to Microsoft's consoles, and this next step, I guess, in that chain of dealings seems promising. I guess like it's quite general and quite vague, I think. In like, we don't have the exact legal wording here, but from the descriptions of it, it sounds like it's kind of like, we will do something together, make a game.
Exactly, or at least we intend to. Like, so it's the letter of intent being there. They're just like, look, we'll write it down on paper that we intend to, but let's not get crazy here. I mean, this is Kojima we're talking about. If anything was actually truly public about what he was planning, I'm not sure I would believe it.
Yeah, and he'd probably scrap it immediately and start afresh.
Or yeah, start it under another title, under a shell company, and then just do what.
Just outsourcing all of his ideas to the Cayman Islands or something.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know what to expect here, really. Like at first I was a little surprised because Kojima doesn't really have like a strong history with Microsoft, Xbox, that sort of thing. Like it's largely been PlayStation. He's been buddies with the whole time, and even Nintendo, with the GameCube Metal Gear Solids, and then Snake
Twin
being
Snakes,
and then Snake being in Smash Bros, like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's not something I expected. And I don't have I've never owned an Xbox. It's nothing against it. I've just always kind of like my game collection and everything has been on PlayStation. So I read it and I thought, oh man, like I feel so betrayed and hurt. And then I thought, like there's just not enough Xbox exclusive content out there. So I say, good for them. Like give them something good, because Kojima games are just wild and worth experiencing if you can't, if you don't have a PlayStation.
Yeah. Like Death Stranding, I think, is the most Kojima game that Kojima has produced to date, I think, right?
I think you're probably right.
Between everything, like the babies and the time ghosts and Mads Mikkelsen, it's all him, baby.
No, it's one of the strangest games that I've ever played. But also, so like I ended up, I don't do a lot of pre-orders, but that's one I had pre-ordered a few months ahead of time, because I typically invariably like Kojima games. And I just remember once they started putting the ads on TV, they were absolutely insane. Or maybe it was like web shows I was watching or something. But at one point I told my wife, I was like, oh, check out this game that's coming out. I've got pre-ordered. And she watched the whole trailer and said, well, what is it about? And I said, I have no idea.
I could not tell you. Norman Reedus is in it. That's
exactly.
Cool.
Like, that's pretty fun. Norman Reedus is there. Guillermo del Toro's there. Like, why not? So she was completely baffled that I had pre-ordered a game. I had no idea what it is about, but I was also way more excited to play a game than you would think, given that I knew nothing about it.
Yeah.
So Death Stranding, that's right up there with the sort of crazy ones. And I just want people on Xbox to be able to experience that. Hopefully that means it also, like typically is the case with Microsoft, also goes to PC. Maybe I'll have to beef up my rig enough to play it there or something.
Yeah. When it eventually,
I can't miss it.
And inevitably arrives on Xbox Game Pass, take them out by storm.
Exactly.
Day one Game Pass. Mm-hmm. It's the new meme taking the gaming world. But yeah. What? So it sounds like he's working on a game for them. I mean, again, it's very vague wording. It might be multiple projects, but what like, do you reckon that it's like a new original idea? Do you think like maybe more Metal Gear Solid, Death Stranding 2?
I would. So I don't know. So I've been thinking, wow, my brain just shorted out because of all of the possibilities. Cause like there's so much that he could do, just because, Kojima, he could do just whatever and it would be fine. I
do feel like thinking too much about Hideo Kojima and his works does cause that in people, so that's fine. That's understandable.
Yeah, that's a good way to just kind of lose yourself. Get
eyes roll into the back of your
somewhere.
Head and it's like, whoa.
Yep, exactly. So I don't know. I doubt it'll be something Metal Gear Solid related unless he's patched stuff up with Konami, which, as far as I know, hasn't been the case, which is a shame, because like I love the Metal Gear Solid games.
Yeah.
So that would be cool, but I don't think it's on the table. Death Stranding 2, I don't know. I thought about that a lot today, given our topic.
Yeah.
And I don't know where they would go with it, just given how self-contained the first one was. But at the same time, I say first one like there's possibly a second one. Yes. But I'll tell you what, I would play it immediately without knowing anything about it. Like,
I have a feeling that if he were to make Death Stranding 2, about 98 to 99% of the game would have absolutely nothing to do with Death Stranding 1. And then the final percentage point would change your life with how it connected to the first game. It would just be, what?
Yeah, no,
that's my guess.
Exactly.
That's my guess.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I don't know how he'd do it, but I suspect that he would.
Yes.
But I absolutely would play it. I wouldn't mind, delivering packages again for some reason, finding it enjoyable throughout the apocalypse.
Yeah, weirdly therapeutic, I think.
Uh-huh. I spent an inordinate amount of time building, like throughout most of the game I didn't, but those like zip lines you can build in the game.
Yeah.
Just building a whole intricate series of zip lines and maxing out the amount. I didn't build anything at one point but zip lines, and it used all of my, like, the quota of machines that you can have, and I just zip all over the place, just having fun. I don't think I was even delivering anything. I was just zipping around.
Just exploring in the space.
Exactly.
How it should be.
Just laughing at ghosts because they can't reach me up on my zip line.
Like, we'll get you next time, Norman Reedus.
Yeah, exactly.
I do like the mental image of the normally stoic Norman Reedus just going along on these zip lines going, wee!
Yeah, because he's having a good time.
He is.
And every once in a while you have to hop off, so you can relieve yourself.
Of
the
course.
fact that there's a dedicated option for that.
Yep, the P button.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Or it's a lot. So I would love to see a sequel to it for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't have any guesses. Like a sequel to Police Knots? I don't know. I doubt it, but maybe.
That would be extremely out of left field and therefore maybe too likely. It's 1,000,000 to 1 chance, which means it's a certainty.
That's probably the one, yeah.
Police Knots 2, finally, after however many decades.
Which I never actually played the first one, but it's been on my list of stuff
neither.
to figure out how to play for a while.
Yeah.
I keep hearing just crazy stuff about it for some reason. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there you have it, folks. Hideo
you heard
Kojima
it here first.
has signed his letter of intent with Microsoft. He'll be bringing something to Xbox, or he intends to bring something to Xbox sometime soon, maybe, probably.
Yeah,
you heard it here first.
Just sometime. That's all.
Yes, at some point in the future or the past. What? Anyway,
now that
it's
would be
Kojima.
wild.
Yeah. I've been working on this game. I've been working on this game for 10 years, and you've already played it. What? How did you do that? Oh my God!
It released on the PlayStation Store to no, I guess Xbox.
On like the day after the PS3 store shut down. It's like, I've just released my new game, but no one will ever get to play it. It's an artistic statement.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. I can't wait for that to happen.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
But in the meantime, while we're waiting for that, let's move on to the main topic of the episode. So we're going to be chatting a bit about remasters and sequels. The main questions we're going to be asking are along the lines of what games need or don't need remasters, and what games we want to have sequels in the series that they're in, or like if they're a standalone game like Death Stranding that maybe needs or wants a sequel, like Death Stranding 2. Who can say? Yeah, remakes and sequels. Cole, you've put a few here in the doc, which I mean, I particularly love the first entry here, Skyrim. I mean,
do you think they'll ever remake it?
I think we can all agree that is one game that is long overdue for a remake or a remaster. You know, it's been so long since I played the original on, I want to say, the Xbox 360 and PS3 and PC. And I mean, I've had that stored away for ages now, and I just have not been able to play it on any other platform at all. It's a shame. It's a shame.
See that? Well, yeah, because that's the problem is you can really only play it on PC and all the consoles and even Switch. But I want it on like a smartwatch or like the Game & Watch entries they've done for Mario and Zelda and stuff like that. I want Skyrim on
Game & Watch Skyrim. My God.
Yeah. Yep.
I feel like it'll become the new, like, you can play Doom on X thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Except it'll be Skyrim. You can play Skyrim on your smart thermostat.
See,
why not?
That is a world I want to live in, where you just you turn the dial. Just it's like people beating Dark Souls on like the Donkey Konga.
Yeah,
I saw drums.
I saw a video of someone completing Breath of the Wild with their feet. Like they used a normal controller, but they were using their feet to operate it, and they beat the game.
That is crazy to me.
Absolutely nuts, isn't it?
Like, yeah, I can't even, like, it makes my feet cramp up just thinking about
Oh
it.
God,
I don't know
yeah.
how you would, like, are
must
they
have
using
been-
their toes as fingers, or are they just kind of like
Yeah, I
mashing
guess
around?
like they probably use the like the balls of their feet to move the sticks, and then they remapped some of the actions to different keys because they weren't able to reach round to get like the lower shoulder buttons and stuff. And so I guess there were some things that they just didn't do because they put those on those shoulder buttons, and I guess they're less important actions. But yeah, this was a guy who had already like played the game to death. He was like a big glitch hunter, I think, as well, just like finding these little tricks to circumvent a lot of the bits of the game, and then just kind of doing random challenge runs just to keep himself and his streaming audience entertained, and entertained they most certainly were.
So speaking of sequels, there is a guy who needs Breath of the Wild 2, like, now.
Yeah. Quick, before I have to beat it with my arse or something. I don't know. Who can say?
It's like, what am I gonna do next? You gotta tune into my OnlyFans to find out.
Yeah. So Skyrim definitely deserves a remake.
Maybe we'll see it. Yeah.
In terms of sequels, you've got several here. You raise a very good point. There are a lot of games that have recently had sequels announced, or recently had sequels or remakes released.
A lot.
I mean, one that I'm immediately going to highlight is I think our mutual favorite, or one of our favorite games, Hollow Knight. Silksong's coming eventually. If you guys want to hear how much we both love Hollow Knight, you can go and check out the Metroidvanias episode a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is a cracking game.
Yeah, I think that was just the Hollow Knight episode, it turned out.
Yeah.
No, we did cover a lot of
I was like, oh yeah, there are all of these other Metroidvanias as well. But let's talk about how they connect to Hollow Knight, which is the best one.
Let's talk about the best one. Yeah, exactly. So that's one. And so I would have said that before, if you had asked me a couple of years ago, I would have said, well, Hollow Knight needs a sequel, but it's coming. It's already coming.
Yeah. The
Axiom Verge. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to say about Silksong. The funny thing about that is that it's been in the works basically since the development of the original Hollow Knight, hasn't it? Because it was originally planned for downloadable content where you could play through the game as Hornet, and there would be some extra bits and pieces. And then they were like, there's too much here. We need to make a whole new game. And every time they release like a new update with some new screenshots and like an interview about it and stuff like that. There was a great feature in Edge about it around the beginning of the year, where they were talking about it, and it looks like they're really, really doing justice to the character and the world design and the level design and stuff. And I just cannot wait for it to come out, because it's one of those games that I feel perfectly justified in saying it will live up to the hype.
Yeah,
like
I don't see how it couldn't.
Yeah, like just its existence will be enough for me.
Like, obviously, Team Cherry really knows how to design a really good Metroidvania, like the environment and the layout and the movement and like just the world, but also the combat and everything. So I have no reason to think they won't nail it, given like the different moveset. I'm really looking forward to the extra mobility and just to like kind of zip around in this world. Like, I can't wait.
It's gonna be so good. Now, you mentioned Axiom Verge earlier.
Yeah,
I didn't realize I was getting a sequel. I've started playing it, and then I got distracted by other things, and I really need to go back to it because I really enjoyed what I did play, and it's like exactly like it's very heavily influenced by the Metroid side of the Metroidvania, isn't it? It's like it's very sci-fi. It seemed a little grimmer than a lot of the Metroid games.
Absolutely.
But like in the style and the gameplay and stuff, it's very reminiscent of like Super Metroid and stuff. And so I definitely need to go back and finish playing that. But I didn't realize it was getting a sequel, I assume.
Yeah, so it's getting a sequel. I don't know how much has been released about it because I couldn't find a ton of info except that it's coming out and a couple of screenshots, and it just looks kind of like Axiom Verge 1 looked like somewhere between NES and SNES kind of graphics. I mean, like intentionally, because clearly there's more they were doing with that. Graphically, they were able to do quite a bit more. But it looks like they're just sort of stepping it up to the next. I can't find out too much about it, but I don't know. I'm stoked
but I'm
because
excited.
I liked the first one a lot, which I haven't really replayed. I've recommended it to a ton of people. Whenever I try to replay it, I think, well, it was sort of a one trick, sort of thing. I enjoyed the hell out of it the first time, but that's why I'm just looking forward to a new one. I gotta relive that first experience, So that's coming out, so it needs it and it's getting it. And like so many other things, like I would have said, we need a remake of various Zelda games, but Nintendo's been all over that lately.
Link's Awakening, one of my personal favorite games. It was the first Zelda I played, actually. I think when I was a wee lad.
Really?
There. Yeah.
On the old thick Game Boy.
Game Boy Thick with 2 C's.
Yeah.
Even before the DX version that came out for the Game Boy Color. A proper old school. Like I have always loved that game, and when they announced that they were making this kind of cool, cute remake on the Switch, I was like, well, this is the thing that's going to make me buy a Switch. It wasn't actually Breath of the Wild. It was Link. It was really. It was Link's Awakening. Yeah.
Oh, that's wild.
I was like, well, now I got to get it.
Oh, and it was good too, like a real true to form remake. So like Nintendo seems to be pretty good about that kind of thing, where they'll add some quality of life stuff, but in this one they didn't change the gameplay at all. Like it's plays exactly like the original, despite like being entirely like 3D, like everything's different. It plays like it brought me back to the original Game Boy days.
Yeah. I think like pretty much the only major change they made, other than the stylistic and graphical upgrade, was that they made the sword like its own button. Because I remember in the original Game Boy, and it was the same in the Oracle of Ages or Oracle of Seasons games, the sword and the shield were items that you had to equip. And so if you wanted to use other items, then you had to swap out one of those. Whereas and then in the remake they were like, okay, your sword and your shield are always accessible, and then you have the other items you can use as well, which is what they use for like every other Zelda game. I don't know, maybe it was like a sort of memory restriction thing on the original Game Boy or something, where or maybe it just didn't have enough inputs, I guess. It
just had the two A,
buttons.
B select start. That's it,
man.
Yeah, so that
what a horrible time to be alive.
Yeah, right. I remember like always pulling up that inventory screen though, and having to go back and equip my shield when you get into where you got to flip the little guys over in the dungeons. So otherwise I would just in the original Game Boy you could do the little map jump skip thing. Do you remember this? I remember.
I do. When you go into the map as it's like transitioning screens, right?
Yep. And if you get it just right, you'll jump a screen down. You can glitch all over the place. And did I see that in Nintendo Power? I can't remember how I knew about that as a kid, but I knew about it. And I just remember like on the playground having my Game Boy. So, I was a nerd even then, and being like, oh, you guys got to check this out. Look what I can do. I can skip around on the screens. And they're like, all right, well, we're going to beat you up, you nerd.
Okay. We don't care about that. Just give us your lunch money. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Give us your lunch money, and also play on the Jungle Gym or something. I got my Game Boy though.
Why would I go on the Jungle Gym where I have the jungle of imagination, right?
Exactly. Little baby Cole's got himself entertained. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. But
so they know what they're doing. Nintendo does a pretty good job with those.
Yeah, and you've put here that you'd quite like to see some remakes of the Zelda DS games.
Yes.
Which would be, I want to say, Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks.
And Spirit Tracks.
Right.
Yep. The two of those I was really fond of. Pretty good. Yeah, I know like people didn't really like Phantom Hourglass. Takes a lot of grief. And I get some of it, but
I remember finding Phantom Hourglass fine, but that like the main thing of it where like you had to return to that temple after everything, and you had to go through it, and like they had those unkillable statue or knight things as well,
like phantoms,
and like it was
right?
It was and it was a forced stealth section every time until like the last time when you go through, and I kind of see the logic where you have this frustrating thing, and then you come back, and when you have the power to like kill those phantoms and stuff, that is very satisfying. It's just they drew it out slightly extremely too long, in my opinion.
Yeah, a little too a lot for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I remember it more fondly because like at the time I'd just been hankering for a new Zelda game, and I thought, I'll put up with this. I'll put up with going through this tower over and over. I'll find everything in the Zelda game. I don't care.
You bet.
So fond of that one, but Spirit Tracks was also pretty fun too, where you lay down the tracks and do all that. I recommend it. Now, like a lot of people didn't like the stylus-based move around and swing and stuff, but I could see him doing something similar, like map the sword to the right stick so you could like stab or slice or, you know.
Yeah.
So I would see that, but you had mentioned the Game Boy Advance ones, the Game Boy Advance Zeldas.
So it was Game Boy Color, actually. I think the Oracle games, Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages. I would love to see them get the Link's Awakening treatment, because I bloody love those games as well. Like this, they're each a great game, in my opinion, in their own right. And then they connect as well, and you get even more game if you play both of them. It's amazing. What more could you ask for? It's like, what if you bought 2 Zelda games, but you actually got like, call it 2.5?
Yeah. So is it they interact in some way? Like if you have the like a pack or something? So
basically, when you complete one of them, then you can get a password, or I think you could connect with the link cable as well, and it would basically you would take that over to the other game, and then you would play through that game, except it would have some extra things in there, like extra items you can get, and like little kind of side quest things as well, and a whole new ending. And when you did some of the new things in the second game, you would get a password which you could take back to the first game to unlock those things in that game as well.
Interesting.
It was just very cool, and I remember having a great time with those. And like the development story behind it is quite interesting as well. I won't go too into detail, but it's kind of connected to the idea that to the fear that we might not see these games coming, because they were developed by Capcom rather than by Nintendo in-house, which might make it a little more difficult. But you know, never say never and all that. But I would love to see those. But you know, they're starting, it seems, to get a move on with the Zelda remakes and remasters and stuff. We had Link's Awakening, and of course Skyward Sword is out this month, isn't it? On the old switcheroo.
Next Friday, even. Yeah. Like I can't wait. Yep. So yeah, I would also like to see those ones, Oracle Ages and Seasons redone, because those are the ones I never really. So I played them, but I never had a Game Boy Color. It's one of the rare ones that I didn't actually have. I played on my brother's. Either way, I've only played them like one time a long time ago. I would love it if they gave them the Link's Awakening treatment and just release both of them on the same cart and give that sort of interoperability through like a save file or something.
Yeah. That would be very cool.
Right? Like I feel like that would just be a huge hit. But again, the Capcom thing does make it tougher.
Yeah,
but Capcom likes money, right? Like I feel like they'd just be printing money.
I have heard that Capcom does like money.
Yeah, I heard the same thing. What?
Weird.
We must have the same source. Yeah.
Yes, the same very reliable contact in the industry. My uncle who works at Nintendo.
Yeah. Yep. Oh yeah. Do we have the same uncle too?
That'd
be wild. So yeah, I would love to see any of those, or honestly any Zelda game redone.
Yeah.
I saw. Yeah. What was it? There was somebody made, I'm going to butcher this, so I shouldn't even bring it up, but somebody had rebuilt the original Legend of Zelda in 3D in some engine. Oh boy. Oh yeah, I'm not going to be able to remember enough of this. I just saw a video of it.
One of the engines, but like a modern gaming engine, you mean?
Yeah, and so like
Like
the
Unity or
the
something.
edges were like walls that went up, and then Link had
Yeah.
some height to him and everything, but he was built out of like the voxels, kind of like
Yeah.
3D dot game heroes, if you remember, that from PS3
Yeah.
or whatever else it was on. I just remember seeing this and thinking, "Oh, I got to download this before it gets taken down," and then I forgot.
Yeah.
It probably doesn't exist anymore.
Before it gets hit with the inevitable Nintendo DMCA violation notice.
Mm-hmm.
Oh well.
Yeah,
Can't be helped. Can't be helped. But yeah, I mean, I guess I mean, mentioning that Capcom does like money, they're also no strangers to remakes and remasters themselves, are they? Because
sure.
all these Resident Evil games that have been remade recently, two and three,
and largely to great acclaim.
Yeah, and like Resident Evil 2, I think pretty much everyone said this is incredible.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 3, I think pretty much everyone said, okay. But that's kind of what they said for the original Resident Evil 3 as well, as I understand it. So
I think that's what it came down to, is people like, we can only run from Nemesis for so long before we don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Just stop firing rockets at me, please.
Yeah. But yeah, it's funny. Like we're kind of in a sort of remake, remaster renaissance of sorts.
Yeah.
Like over the last few years, there's like the Final Fantasy VII remake as well.
Yep.
Like that must have been in the works for years, because that's such a beloved game. And
they teased it, even though like not in that form, but like when the PS3 came out, like the tech demo for Final Fantasy VII had like everybody really worked up, and then they had what became the precursor for 15, but they just did that like 8 years later. So
yeah.
People have wanted it for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just looking at the other things that you've put here. Yes, God of War as well. Like not necessarily a kind of remake or a remaster so much as a reboot almost, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like past the events of the first one, but they're just like, you know what? That story is done. Here's a whole new story with Kratos.
Yeah.
And his son. And then, so yeah, it's just kind of starting over, which I really love, because there's a history, but it's also brand new at the same time.
Yeah.
Different pantheon. It's good.
Yeah. And it's, as I understand it, I haven't played the Final Fantasy VII remake, but they kind of did a similar thing with it, as I understand, where like it's still a recognizable story to fans of the original, but they do change things as well, I think.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
There are things that are actually different about it. So without going too far into it, and I'm a huge Final Fantasy VII fan. Like it's one of my first games that like I really fell in love with. There's Final Fantasy VI, and then 7, like I was just stoked for. Yeah. So anyway, it just takes those opening hours, but it just draws them out, because in the original, you go through the whole city of Midgar in what is a pretty short amount of time, but the remake kind of asks the question, like, what if that actually happened on a realistic time scale? It would take you some days to get through this, and what happens during those days, and it just fills it in. It feels way more whole. And I like it a lot. Some people don't like when you change because stuff has changed too. Like that would absolutely could not have happened in the original. Yeah, it's worth playing. You got to check it out. It's good.
Yeah, I will. One of these days, Cole. One of these days, when I find myself with a little bit of free time, maybe I should.
It's the big thing.
But yeah, like I'm wondering, like, if there's not a formula, but like some key things that make a remake or a remaster or something. I guess more a remake if we're talking changes, but like that make it successful or that make it good. Yeah. Like because you've got your Gods of War and your Finals Fantasy, where they have changed things in these remakes, and by all accounts, to great acclaim. Like people have loved those games, even loving their predecessors as well. And then you've got something like Link's Awakening, for example, where they've kind of updated it, and they've kind of certainly graphically upgraded it. And it is a remake, but kind of mechanically, it almost feels more like a remaster as well, because as you were saying before, like it feels like the same game in a way that I think, well, God of War certainly doesn't. And I understand Final Fantasy VII Remake doesn't really feel like the original Final Fantasy VII, even if it's even if it's kind of hitting a lot of the same beats of the story, for example. Like, but that's also done very well as well. And it's kind of hitting a certain niche. But I guess, I don't know, I guess what I'm asking is like, what do you think makes a remake or a remaster work particularly well? Because there have been plenty of examples of ones that don't work so well as well. You know?
Yeah, it's funny. I was going to ask you the exact same thing, because that's the real question, isn't it? Like that's the code you have to crack. And I feel like if you look at all the remakes and remasters, which have really been very prevalent over the past few years, some of them work, some of them don't. They all kind of do things differently. But I think in common, the ones that have been successful simultaneously appeal to that nostalgia that people have for the original. They want to go back and they want to see their favorite scenes sort of recreated. They want to get that feeling that they had when they played it the first time. But people, like, if you ever go back and replay a game that you really, really loved, a lot of times you peter out after a few hours because you think, boy, it's just like, it's a bit more boring gameplay wise than I actually, like remembered. And so I think it's a balance of hitting that nostalgia while adding quality of life improvements to really make people enjoy it as a new game. Like Final Fantasy VII, I think, is successful in that it just feels so full compared to the original, but there are so many beats that it hits that were just part of the classic. So it feels really good because you're like, oh, I know this thing's coming up, and it happens and it feels great. But every other part of the game is just gameplay wise very different. The characters feel different. I think Link's Awakening was sort of a unique one in that, like you said, like it is exactly the original game, like more or less, it plays exactly like the original. I thought maybe there'd be something different, or it'd give you like free movement, kind of like some of the recent, like Link Between Worlds or something. But no, you're still stuck on the cardinal movement is the only way you can go. And I thought, what a strange choice. But at the same time, so much of the puzzles and the movement and how to get around that map require it. Like you couldn't really do it any other way without breaking the progression. So yeah, I think taking the aspects of modern gaming that keep people engaged while appealing to that sense of nostalgia makes it apply to kind of the whole gamer base in that way. Because, like kids these days, I say as an old man, they're not going to have played Link's Awakening. They're not going to have played Final Fantasy VII. Or probably not. So you don't have that benefit of nostalgia to drive them on. You have to make sure that the game is also fun to play because you're trying to draw in a new audience into an established franchise. And so make it fun to a new audience, even if they don't know the original, but make sure that the nostalgia is there for the people who want it. Because it feels like going home, it kind of feels like summer vacation as a kid, or like a snow day when you'd really tuck into a game. Like that's what I think of.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think also drawing on what you said a little earlier about Link's Awakening and how they hadn't changed the movement mechanics, it was still just the cardinal directions. I think in a sense, like when you're making a remake or a remaster of that, you kind of have to be aware that, like, you have to be aware, I think, of what would happen if you changed or removed a certain element of the original. And as you said, a lot of like the puzzles in the gameplay are kind of designed with, for example, that movement system in mind. And so changing that would arguably change some aspect of what the game is. And maybe you're fine with that, or maybe you want to try and keep it very authentic if that is still a good and enjoyable experience for like new gamers as much as it is for the retro heads. And if you're not aware of that, then I guess you start to run into problems when you're making these remakes that don't work so well. Like I'm trying to think of a remake that didn't work so well. Like the Prince of Persia remake, I think was or reboot or something was
Oh, I forgot they even did that.
broadly panned and instantly forgotten.
The one like years and years ago, or like 10 years ago or something, or they do one more recently. They did Sands of Time.
Yeah, so Sands of Time, and then that had two sequels, and I think they did another remake of it after that. Unless I'm thinking of something else. Anyway, I'm going to keep talking as though I do know what I'm talking about. But yeah, from what I remember reading about it, they just kind of they lost a lot.
People didn't like them. I recall that. And then they made the movie, right, with
oh god, with
Jake Gyllenhaal.
Wow, that was that was a classic right there.
I forgot about that until this exact moment. Oh boy, I like Jake Gyllenhaal, but that's
he needs to pick his vehicles.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe not a great choice.
We love you really, Jake, who almost certainly listens to the KeenGamer podcast.
I know he does. Jake,
all but guarantee.
He won't return my calls.
Yeah. I'm worried. I got
a movie. I got a movie deal.
You're tearing this family apart. Please.
Yeah, Jake, come on. So like those ones didn't. I was trying to think because there's something else that was remade. Oh boy, I'm not going to think of it. Doesn't that make for good podcasting? Trying to think of something for a while.
I do have an example of a bad reboot or remake, which is Thief.
Thief. I never played the original either. Yeah,
like the original certainly. I think the sequel as well are beloved by like stealth and immersive sim fans. And they did a reboot. I can't remember when. It was kind of like early or mid 2000s or something. And they just lost everything. And I feel like a lot of that came from the kind of haphazard chucking bits that weren't like cool anymore, but not really realizing how it was kind of connected into the kind of inner tissue of the game.
Sure.
And sort of being left with a big nothingness, and people didn't like it at all.
Yeah, which sucks if you're a fan of like you're waiting for that thing because you were a fan of Thief in the first place. Like that's always so heartbreaking when you see that sort of thing happen. There's one that's in my head that's still escaping me, but
that's all right. If it occurs to you, then you can blurt it out at the top of your voice. And
there we go. That's what I usually do anyway.
But yeah, what about sequels then? Like well, I think it's a bit of a two-parter, because what makes you really want a sequel for a game, and what will make that sequel particularly good?
Boy, those are good questions.
Riddle me this, Kole.
I think, what are my criteria for wanting a sequel? I think it's as simple for me, a simple person, as like if I really liked a game and there's only one of it, like, I want a sequel to it. Doesn't matter if the story's like fully over, standalone. So I think one of them I put on my list is Cave Story. Now, it might be because I'm still kind of like chasing that, like the magic of the original, like when, especially like Cave Story Plus had come out, and there was so much wonder in that game because it was really, I don't know how to describe it. Like anyone who's played it and done all the different like routes and endings and stuff could attest to, is like you can play the game in a bunch of different ways as you go through. You can make these choices that don't seem obvious at the time. Like, no, I think I'm going to turn down this machine gun that lets me like hover jump, and it makes the game way harder. But if you pass it up, then you can get a different item later that fundamentally changes the game, and there's like a true path you can get on. And if you find all the secret stuff, then there's like a whole secret level at the yada yada yada. Like the way that was done, there were so many fun hidden things in there that I want Cave Story as an aesthetic, as a gameplay style, and as a sort of not a game that doesn't hold your hand and has all these branches that are non-obvious, that are just fun to discover or do something on accident and you realize the game is different. Like that, I think is the sort of thing that really makes me want a sequel. But then it could also be like I had on my list Jack and Daxter, which I don't know if
Oh
you ever
yeah,
played those games, but
I didn't know.
wow, they were good. And I haven't played them since PlayStation 2, is when
Mm,
they remade them at one point, but it was
yeah.
like just panned. Like I guess they just performed very badly.
Mm,
Like the performance was bad.
right.
Um and so I never went back and tried them again. Maybe it's because like I was gonna play them on Vita and I think it was just like 12 frames a second or something terrible. But I
Mm,
loved those when they first came out. So that's one I think actually I would go for a remaster rather than a sequel. Um, but I just want to see
fair.
some franchises continued, whether it's yeah, Cave Story. I wouldn't mind seeing a sequel to that. Another Metal Gear Solid game would be great, but as we
Yeah, I
said,
mean, you know,
Konami's got to patch things up with Kojima though.
yes, that's bloody legal tricksy business. That would be lovely, wouldn't it?
Uh-huh. But or just games that have good mechanics where by the end you feel like you want more, like Super Mario Odyssey. Like I threw that
Yeah,
down there because people have thought, oh, maybe they'll make a sequel to that like they did with Mario Galaxy, where it
yeah,
was so good, people wanted more, and they made a sequel that was arguably better than the original.
yeah,
Like it
yeah,
was
yeah,
just an amazing sequel. I want Super Mario Odyssey again. I
yeah.
want all new levels, except I want New Donk City, just more of it.
Yes,
I
and
want
if
to
they could
bounce around on
change
cars.
all of the music to that song that Pauline sings.
Yeah, jump up
Yeah, yeah,
superstar or
yeah.
something.
That's it. That sounds about right. Yeah,
It's
just
got to be close.
change all the music to that, and
Huh?
yep, you're sold. Please take my money, Nintendo.
Yeah,
I'll
yep.
even I'll even buy an OLED Switch to play it on.
If I had to buy an OLED Switch for that and Breath of the Wild 2, yeah, I would be right there.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know. What about? Oh, go ahead.
No. Sorry. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was going to ask you basically the same. Like, what to you makes you want a either? Yeah, let's say sequel. Like specifically, what
Yeah,
leaves something in your head where you're like, I need more of this.
yeah. I mean, I think that's the key thing. Like, it's more, right? Like, if I want a sequel to a game, it's because I really, really loved the original game, and I feel like if I got a sequel that was sort of the same game again, but kind of slightly different, then that's not that satisfying. But if they take all the goodness from the first game and then build on that, like I think, like you were saying with Mario Galaxy and Mario Galaxy 2, like they took all these core mechanics and ideas from the first Galaxy game and then just like added more stuff on top of that, which arguably made it even better than the first game. Like I think the aim of a sequel should always be to surpass the first game, which can be almost a poison chalice sort of thing, because like people find certain games so, like they love them so much. Like if you come across this like perfect game, and I guess theoretically this is something that we should be worried about with Hollow Knight Silk Song, like if you like a game so much, then the sequel has such a high bar to hit, because I think deep down everybody does kind of want that. It's like we want the same and more for the sequel, and if that's under delivered, even if it's still a really good game, then it just ends up getting unfavorably compared to the original game, right?
Because people get their hopes way up in those cases. They think that was
Yeah,
great. I want that again, but better. Like
yeah,
they want that magic that happened the first time, which is so hard to do if you're going to be making something that also needs to feel familiar.
yeah. I think in retrospect, I mean, I say retrospect, it's more like in future spect. Having just mentioned Hollow Knight Silk Song,
Mhm.
from what we know of it, it kind of seems like they're hitting a very good line with that as a sequel, where a lot of the sort of kind of narrative and kind of level design and stuff and kind of key core concepts of the game, like the exploration and like combat and difficulty, but kind of fairness and all that sort of stuff looks like it will be in the game. But with Hornet as a character, like the moment to moment gameplay is going to feel so new and so novel, while, you know, like you'll presumably still know kind of instinctively how to, you know, jump and grab things and attack and things like that. But kind of beyond that, it's going to be, it's likely going to play very differently from the original Hollow Knight, but looks like it will kind of keep that essence of the first one, which I think and hope will mean that it'll be a very successful sequel, because that's kind of it, isn't it? Like it's that essence of the original game that you want to see continued on into the next, but just with more of everything else and new and different things, as long as they're good as well. Like, yeah, that concept of more, it's a tricky one.
Oh, it really is. I do feel like they'll probably nail it in the case of Silk Song, but I think we've, between the last 2 episodes we've done, probably said that 100 times.
Yes. If you can't tell, I think big fans of Hollow Knight and Team Cherry.
Big fans. And that one does feel like one where it's like, well, you could easily take the initial concept and then kind of, you know, transform it a bit, expand on it a bit in a way that other games have tried to just retread the same ground where, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I think that does really kind of summarize it pretty well. What makes a good sequel. Now we'll just have to see if it actually pans out.
Yeah. I mean, as you said, there are a lot of ones coming soon with Silk Song, which I think we may have mentioned once or twice. We've got
Silk Song. Yep.
Yeah, we've got the God of War sequel coming as well. Wait, they said that it wasn't called Ragnarok, right? It was going to be called something else. Anyway,
I thought it was called Ragnarok, so maybe I'm wrong.
Dang it! And yes, all this fun stuff to come, and we'll kind of just have to see and perhaps revise our opinions on the sequels and remakes and remasters as time goes on. Perhaps we'll do a follow-up episode to this at some point in the future, but I feel like that probably rounds it out fairly nicely for today. Would you agree, Cole? Nice point to
I would say I agree. Yeah, nope, I like it. And yeah, we'll have to look back and see how our predictions were as far as what we're anticipating for the sequels. Yeah, let's look back at it.
Mario Odyssey 2, Nintendo, make it happen. Come on. Now, we are going to finish up soon, but before we do, we just wanted to say a couple of words. Our wonderful regular host and absolute podcast workhorse who organizes everything and does all of the editing and everything, Tristan Zeldin, will be departing for pastures new soon. He's taken up a position at Giant Freaking Robot, which, despite its name, is not a giant freaking robot. It is a gaming outlet, so you can follow his work over there. But it sadly means that he will be leaving the KeenGamer team and leaving the KeenGamer podcast, which is very sad, because he's a lovely guy, and we're all super grateful to him for getting the podcast up and running again and giving us all this opportunity for podcasting and talking about games for 1 to 2 hours at a time. Like it's been really, really fun. And yeah, we wish Tristan all the best and hope that you have a wonderful time at Giant Freaking Robot and elsewhere. Have you got anything to add, Cole?
I was just going to say, it's been great working with Tristan. He's really got this podcast going, kept everything together, it's been great to work with him. Gonna miss him a ton. Tristan, we're gonna miss you, man. Best of luck out there.
We will see you soon. Maybe we'll have him on as a special guest on the podcast.
We need special guests sometimes, right? Yeah.
Once he's a big, high-flying, senior editor at one of the massive publications or something, we'll bring him back into the fold for a week.
As the celebrity guest for the week. Yeah.
Looking forward to it. And Tristan, by your silence, I can only assume that you agree. So see you then.
That's the only way to take it.
All right. Well, that will about do it from us for tonight, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been the KeenGamer podcast. I'm Max. I've been joined by the wonderful Kole. We're here every Thursday. So if you've enjoyed listening to this, then check back in there. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
See ya.